Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 13th meeting of the East Hempfield Township Planning Commission. I invite you to join me with pledge the flag to open the meeting. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, before we get started, we do have a couple regular members missing, so I would ask, I'll just teeny, meeny, miny, mo.
John, go.
I'll ask Mr. Spangler and Mr. Rush to be voting members this evening. Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our October 9th meeting. Were there any corrections or additions? If not, then I'm ready for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for the acceptance of the minutes as written for the October 9th meeting. Not October, October 9th meeting.
I'll second.
Was that you? I just heard from, is that you?
Okay, that's fair.
All right. Well, it came from that. All right. I have a motion by Mrs. Burns, seconded by Mr. Detter, that we approve the minutes of the October 9th meeting as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll abstain.
Two abstentions, Mr. Caldis and Mr. Rohr, because of absence. So that'd be 1, 2, that'd be 5, 0, 2. All right, the first plan for review this evening is a sketch plan for 21-24 Ambassadors.
Good evening, Chris Vinarchik with RGS Associates. I'm joined tonight by Joe Deeren, the applicant for the project that we'll be speaking about tonight. What you have up on the screen there, I'd like to just start by a brief background. The purpose of why we're here again is a sketch plan. So we're seeking your input on the proposed project, and we also have a waiver of the preliminary plan request before you. So as was noted, the project is 2124 Ambassador Drive. It is in the RCC Regional Commerce Center zone. And we're proposing about 11,300 square foot commercial daycare and an associated outdoor classroom and outdoor playground for the project. It is a redevelopment project, so if you are familiar with the site, right kind of near just east of Lime Springs Square, again, south side there of Ambassador Circle. The existing property has, if you're familiar with the River Rock Academy, which is situated here, single driveway access off of Ambassador Circle. The property is served by public sewer and water. Public water would be the City of Lancaster. Public sewer would be Lancaster Area Sewer Authority. The project that we're looking at doing is what's shaded here with the colors on the west side of the property. As it is right now, if you're familiar with it, again, it's an underutilized parcel. There's an extremely large parking lot here, of which they do not need all those parking spaces. So we looked at a better use for the property rather than just developing a raw piece of ground somewhere in the township. There's a demand for the daycare service for the community. This site worked out very well in terms of positioning the building here. Because there's so much impervious on the property today, we would actually end up pulling back the impervious in the proposed condition. We go from about 64% impervious to about 59%. So not a great deal, but it is a reduction in the impervious on the property. You can see we have, from the parking breakdown, we end up between the two uses having enough parking. We've done some background research on what River Rock feels they need for their students, for their staff, and then as well as the daycare, same thing for their students and for their staff. So we're showing there about approximately 20 staff members for this location. You can see I mentioned the outdoor area here and then another outdoor area here. That would be pervious surface. And what's represented here is this existing trees along that southern property line. So that's really it as far as the project goes in a nutshell. I think a pretty simple, straightforward project, which is sometimes refreshing versus a large, complex project. But again, being a redevelopment, we're excited to be able to find a better use for this property. And we're seeking your input on the project. Obviously, what we would like to do is move forward into the land development stage. And if we were to do say a separate preliminary plan, separate final plan, the plans would essentially be the same. There is no phasing of this project. There's no subdivision that's proposed as part of this, no public streets. Those are kind of the criteria that kick you into a separate prelim and a final plan. So that's why we're seeking that request of a modification of the preliminary plan to enable us to go right into a final land development plan. As far as stormwater management, we'll take a closer look at that during the land development plan stage. But again, with a reduction of impervious, we should be in pretty good shape to be able to handle that locally, not having to introduce any kind of large underground detention facility or surface facility. We do expect the disturbance from our estimates to be under an acre. So I don't see us even going for an NPDS permit through DEP. This will just be handled through an erosion and sedimentation control plan, being that, again, the site's developed today. So that's really the background of the project. Be happy to answer any questions you have. But again, our purpose is really to seek any input from you and then get your recommendation on that waiver of preliminary plan.
Chris, you mentioned the parking, and when I look at plans, I think I can read 77 spaces provided, 77 spaces required, 39 spaces provided, 39 spaces required. Is that just such perfect calculations, or why did both of those come out exactly right?
It's probably actually conservative. As we were looking at the number of students and staff, we wanted to estimate down the higher side, so we knew whether or not we'd be okay. It sounds like from our estimations and talking to the operator who would be here, that will probably have less students than what we originally anticipated. So that parking requirement will actually probably go down. But during land development, we would certainly provide all the documentation of that based on the ITE, as your ordinance identifies how you calculate it based on the use, and we would show that breakdown. In the event that it wouldn't meet it as separate users, your ordinance does allow for a shared parking scenario, and we think that might be an option if, in fact, we have to go that route. But we believe by just even studying them independently that we can meet the requirement.
Well, excuse me, where I was going was if those two numbers are more than enough, is there a possibility to cut back even a little more parking since you're taking a good chunk out for this? Maybe a few more spaces would allow more pervious, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can talk through. If we find that we can lose a couple spaces, still meet that requirement, I mean, rather than build that impervious area, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Chris, on sheet 9 of my documentation, it shows a plan of a bus being able to navigate both properties. Does that count as for fire department as well? Does that meet the fire department?
I recall talking to my team, we ran a fire truck through there and it worked. I think this scenario, the exhibit you might be referring to, is when we were in dialogue with the operator. They were wanting us to make sure they could maintain circulation, not only with River Rock, but then also for the proposed daycare as well. So I think what you're looking at, I believe, was probably a large school bus.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we just wanted to be able to show that to the operator of both buildings, that the school bus can still navigate that. They do that today, but obviously by introducing that building, we wanted to make sure they would do that. As I understand, I believe they come in today here, swing over and kind of come down around here, park, drop students off, and then exit. So they would essentially, we wanted to show that same movement, but just not having to go all the way over here. My guess is what they do is there's not a lot of curbing out here. They probably just come through and just basically just make a circle through there today.
Yes. My question is that works for a fire department though, to have navigation through there if they needed to go to the front of the building or the side of the building if need be.
Yeah, again, I think when we ran it, I think what the plan you're looking at is showing the bus, but we ran it internally in our office with a fire
Oh,
truck
okay, okay,
and it
Yep.
did work.
okay.
I assume we're not on Zoom, or are we on Zoom?
No comments on Zoom.
Does anybody in the audience have any input on this plan? Nope. And I think we have a waiver to take action.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the waiver of preliminary plan requirements for 21-24 Ambassador Circle project, subject to all staff and engineering review comments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Detter, seconded by Mrs. Byrne, that we recommend approval of the waiver of the preliminary plan requirement for 21-24 Ambassador Circle, subject to all staff and engineer comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So that would be unanimous, 7-2.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is the Lesser Lumber final plan. Good evening.
Sure, I know how to use this. All right,
Mhm.
I'm good. Can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
All right. My name is Mark McGreckey. I'm with Pantera Engineering. We're here tonight on behalf of Lesser Lumber. We have a final lot add-on and land development plan as our subject. You're looking currently at our existing conditions plan. The pieces that we had purchased are located here. It's actually one deeded parcel, but they never combined the lots. The house actually straddles the two property lots. The property currently is 7.71 acres, and this is about another half acre. And if you don't mind, or do I forward with this, or? The lot addition will remove basically these lot lines here, and then there will be one large parcel at that point, about 8.23 acres. Primary access is off of Good Drive. Even though the address is Marietta Avenue, I have no idea how that ever came about. I assume maybe at one point, this used to be so many different properties. I think it was,
Well, that used to be the main entrance. off
yeah,
Marietta.
I think that it
It
came
was a
down
good
Trolley
place.
Avenue at one point, and they may have owned a portion of that, but which is here. We do have Church Street along the rear of the property. Again, good drive out here. What we're proposing to do, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Now we're kind of zoomed into where those two parcels, here's that existing residential structure. That is to be kept for the time being. They ultimately might renovate it into office space. They're not doing it immediately, but we've accounted for that in our calculations. Their primary purpose is to add some additional parking spaces, and they're also proposing 3,000 square foot. I call it open storage. I don't know if it's really open storage, but it's not conditioned space. It doesn't have heating and air conditioning. It's just where they put materials, basically, to keep them out of the weather. And so if you're not familiar with the operation, it's a lumber yard essentially. So, and so what we're showing here is an expansion of about 35 spaces, but when it all boils down to it, we're losing parking spaces that were kind of striped along here, although I don't think they were really compliant parking spaces. They were spaces in number, if nothing else. And we had some parking spaces here that we lost. So I think it was a net gain 16 new spaces. So we have 57 on the site right now, and we end up with 73 spaces when it's all said and done. They have, not on one shift, but they have about 70 employees between, I would imagine part-time and full-time. So with that, I mean, you can see the next slide if you're interested in the stormwater, but that's the bed that we ended up with. We're grading everything around, collecting it here, and then discharging it into the storm sewer that's already on site, and that goes down to the basin that's on the big residential retirement community that's below us. I don't know the exact name of that, but it's fairly large. And so in a nutshell, that's what we're proposing. We do have David Miller's last letter from October 17th. We don't have any issues with the remaining comments and addressing those comments. There are, I believe, 3 deferral / modification requests that we have requested. And I can run through those unless anyone has questions at this point.
No, and I would just say, go through them in order, and if anybody has a question, ask it while he's going it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
before about the parking?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Is the parking primarily intended for employees, for customers, or like internal leisure trucks?
As I understand it, it's going to be a combination of mostly employees and customers that would come to there, mostly probably freeing up the spaces that might be used right now by employees that aren't available to the customers. Most of their customers, at least from when have been there for meetings, are pretty much contractors. It's not too many people from the public.
Right.
And so I think they want to have some more spaces available in this location so they can have a little bit better access back into this building and this location here. And I believe as far as the trucks go, the trucks will stay in the yard for the most part. These aren't really for the supply or the building supply trucks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, while
Yep.
sorry, while you're on that slide or
Sure.
talking about parking, I'm familiar with in general the layout back there, but I'm not familiar with, I'll say, driveways and Church Street and the other driveway that's below those houses. Is Church Street considered a through street that's open to the public?
It's an alley, I believe.
But is it-
And I believe it's a public alley, as far as.
So is there any expectation then that, I'm kind of assuming it from the way that drive is placed there, that Church Street will be a major way to get back to those parking spaces?
If you don't mind going back one,
Yeah,
probably one
right.
more slide there. From what Lezer explains, their customers are encouraged to come in here. They also come in, I believe, Trolley Avenue. And as part of, I've seen customers park here and on this side as well. I'm less familiar with what happens over on this side currently, because these are the parking spaces I'm saying that are getting eliminated that dimensionally, I don't think, are even close to being conforming spaces. But the intent, and if you go back, if you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry, forward, I said back, but this access point here has signage. It's hard to see what it says, but it directs all traffic to this access point, and then there's signage here that directs all the traffic out to Good Drive. That was a requirement of the zoning hearing board to make sure that that traffic stays circulated and out and down to Good Drive, was to get the signage on there. And you can also see we had to show, where the clear sight lines are. There's not a lot of room to expand. this is pretty well paved through this area here. It does neck down. So it's wider than 14 feet, you know, I would say from our portion forward to trolley. This portion, as it heads back, is probably more along on the lines of 12 to 14 feet, and it's not utilized or intended to be utilized by our customers for traffic. And I think that's why there was the condition placed by the zoning hearing board, the signage on our plan, and I think there's notes on the plan to that regard as well.
What's the situation on the south side of the houses to the west of you? Maybe you need to go back a couple slides, Nate, to see the whole thing there. Oh, there.
I mean, the house is over on.
No, the properties to the left, to the west of the one you're working on.
Here.
Yeah, do they have access to the back of their properties or?
There is an access easement of record, if you see it going through here,
Mhm.
that was established with a 1995 land development plan for LH Brubaker, I believe, was the owner at that time. And this access here gives them access out to Trolley Avenue.
So there's no intention then of totally gating off
There's no.
this property?
No.
Only the Good Drive gate gets closed then?
Only the Good Drive gate gets
Okay.
closed, yes. Yeah, there's no other changes to access being proposed as far as gating, other than the signage that we talked about that we're adding to direct our customers down to Good Drive.
You see, that Good Drive entrance is a huge improvement
Oh, yeah.
to this
No,
site.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that church, I mean, that's pretty narrow. No trucks are gonna go out there.
I'm not
And
I'm
it's,
not talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering,
It's
I just want to
not
make
much.
sure, because
I
I'm
don't think
assuming
there's
those
much
are,
of that.
those are probably garages on those
Yeah, I think
properties.
people
Yeah,
might have
most
some-
of them
So
are
they need to get
garages.
there,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to make sure that they
They can access.
can
yeah.
access it.
The
Okay.
crematory's back there.
What is?
Yeah, that's right.
The board's crematory. There's a
Yes,
little
it's
church,
right across from our parking lot.
And there's a cemetery back there too.
Yeah, there is.
That's
And the
Over
entrance
here.
onto, what is it, Rohrstown is not friendly.
That's a tough one.
People don't. wanna go
Entrance
out
is,
that
but
way.
you'd have to go all the way down through and go, come out Trolley or come out Good.
Yeah, that's why I
have a
think people
girlfriend that
wanna
lives
go
up
out
there,
trolley.
Who lives up that way, beside the cemetery.
All right,
All right.
thanks.
As far as the first request is actually a deferral request relative to sidewalks as they apply to this little portion of Good Drive. And believe the sidewalk pretty much stops at the property line there or close to it. And we're asking for the deferral for the extension. There is no sidewalk on this side. And we don't really have customers that visit us on foot. And so I believe that the ask from David Miller is that we show it on the plan with a grading exhibit and a note on the plan. I've done that before on plans in this township, so I'm familiar with that. We show it and we note that it's deferred and we put the deferral note on there. So that's the first ask. That's section 265-8.4.A, parens 1, parens B.
Good Drive doesn't have sidewalk anywhere there? Or-
Ends
Oh, I passed.
right about here, from what I saw on
Hmm.
Google Earth anyway, or Google Street View.
And doesn't tie all the way up to Marietta? Even on the other side of the road?
I didn't see any on that side.
No, I don't think so. Not on the other side.
That's it.
But you could pull up the maps, I mean, that's.
Can't
Sidewalk
remember.
stops right before the entrance.
I
Like
do
that
like to
book.
connect sidewalks.
Where the sidewalk ends.
Yep, ends right
Right
Right there.
here.
Sure enough. And your property line is that corner there. So
Yes.
you're only dealing with those.
That little bit.
I
40
think there's a
40
little
feet.
bit of sidewalk that's obscured by that evergreen tree, because when you go into street view, you can see that somebody literally chainsawed it straight up the side. When you get back further, yeah, they've trimmed those up pretty good. So, yeah, our property ends pretty much close to where that sewer, you see that sewer manhole, I think that's on the other property. So I think we're right there. I don't know whose all trees those are, because I assume that they were planted by the other folks, but I think they were planted in concert when both of those plans went through. So I'm not sure who actually specifically owns that buffer.
Villas.
So is that the only section of Good Drive that doesn't have sidewalk? Trying to
Whole
remember
nother section that doesn't. It's the only section
around
that
the,
does.
oh, that's the only section that does. Okay.
Around
Stauffer's here.
Stauffer's does, and
Yeah,
then
and
across from
then-
Lidl, there does, but, and
Okay,
then up
It's
around the
back
health
up right
campus, they
here.
do.
they do there,
Yeah.
I knew that, but I'm not sure once you go up, get to the bridge, I don't think there's any on the other side of the bridge. Cause they used to plant that field over there. I had to jump the curb, but not a sidewalk. Yeah, I don't think.
It's
there's any
spotty
there.
through there.
There's some non-motorized path out there though, by the health campus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Around the whole health
there
campus,
is,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, Mark,
All right.
continue.
The second request is section 265-8.7 capital I, parens D, or parens 2, parens D, regarding parking lot planting islands. And if you don't mind going quickly to the combined landscaping and lighting plan, because there's not that much landscaping to it. A sheet in that set. So the request is, as you can see, the outline of our underground bed is pretty substantial. And that's because we have a limiting zone. So we have a pretty shallow bed that we're dealing with out there. Figure you got an 8-acre site and I'm hemmed in somehow. It always seems to happen. And so we have these grass planting islands at the end of the parking lot, but getting a tree in there is, you know, I can plant a tree there, but it ain't gonna live, you know. So I am suggesting we take and put the planting island trees over here between us and the property owner. That'll be a better use maybe of those trees as well, help, you know, put a little bit higher buffer during the summer. So that is the nature of the request. We're not asking to eliminate the trees, just plant them in a different location on the property, but near, and I think beneficial to what we're proposing. And then I don't know if there's any comments on that, so.
Guess not.
Mhm.
And then the last request is from the Stormwater Management Ordinance, section 260-24 point capital C, parens 1, parens A, bracket 4, minimum pipe diameter. A lot of times it's a 15-inch minimum, and it depends on, I guess, your perspective of the world. A lot of times we look at it as, you know, if it's being a dedicated pipe and in a street, you'd want to have a 15-inch pipe. And here, where we're not conveying with these either. If you have a conveyance, a lot of times you'd like to have that. We have, you don't mind going back one to the grading, and if you see, we have inlets that are collecting right around these two islands here. This is an inlet that's also collecting in a grass area off to the side. And we are collecting it and then putting it straight into the bed. And the discharge pipe that goes around the bed, it can only be 8 inches. Our bed's only 1.5 feet deep. So in order to get the pipe in and get cover over the pipe, that's the limitation that we have there. It's, again, it's not, the pipe that's outletting the system is a 15-inch pipe. The pipe that's connected to this underground pipe that's kind of circling or not, I would say rectangling around the rectangle, is distributing it within the stone bed under the ground. And then this pipe that connects to the storm manhole and then to the inlet, that is all 15-inch pipe. It's only the pipe that's circulating around in the bed. More of a stormwater management, it's in the facility, in other words, it's in the confines of the bed. So that's the ask there, and I believe that David Miller had recommended granting all of those with, as I said, the one notation about showing an exhibit for the sidewalk. Other than that, the rest of the comments, I'm clear on what we need to do. There's minor housekeeping pieces there. I don't know if anything else needs to be discussed, from the township staff side, or if the planning commission members have any questions about the review that's out there. Otherwise, we would be looking to potentially get action on the waivers and the plan, subject to David Miller's letter.
Were there any other questions from the commission? No?
Have there been any issues with drainage in that area previously?
Where we're proposing the stormwater? Not to my knowledge, no.
I just saw the residential on the sides, that's all.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then our first action is to take some action on the waivers, 4 of them.
Chairman, I make a motion to recommend approval of modifications, request number 2 and 4, and conditional approval of request number 1 and 3 for the Lesser Lumber Project, subject to all staff and engineering comments.
I'll second it.
A motion by Mr. Spangler, seconded by Mr. Caldas, that we recommend approval of modification request numbers 2 and 4, and conditional approval of requests 1 and 3 for Lesser Lumber Project, subject to all staff and engineer comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So that would be unanimous. And then we have the final plan itself.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the final land development plan for the Lesser Lumber Project, Township File 24-08.02, subject to all staff and engineering comments.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mrs. Byrne, seconded by Mr. Caldas, that we, recommend approval of the final land development plan for the Lesser Lumber Project, subject to all staff and engineer comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So that would be unanimous as well.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And I guess I can say happy Thanksgiving, even though it seems really weird.
Yeah, right. Yep.
It's only like a month of a week ago, it was like 80 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Now it's like 35 out there.
Yeah.
Feels like Thanksgiving.
Thanks. Bye, Mark.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Is there any other business, old, new? Any questions on the Nate's project update?
Not an exciting one this time.
No. Projects delayed, meetings canceled
No,
and
not a lot.
whatever. All right. I assume there's no public comment. Cindy,
nothing.
that Cindy person doesn't want to chime in or anything?
She's still there at least.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Cindy. No further business. This meeting is adjourned. 7:35.
Too bad.
Looking like we'll have a meeting in December.
It's a little longer than I thought it was gonna be.
It'll be like one item on there, but
No, not at all.
you've done a great job.
Not
You're
at
having
all.
a consistent 15-30 minute meeting,
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
1 or 2 item each time.
Small little infill projects and.
Yeah.
No, next Thursday.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And then you'll be back
Just
to
yeah.
the
We
next
have
meeting.
many
I'll
sites.
come back on December.
Well,
2nd.
not that are for
The whole
sale.
month.
Yeah.
Really
Not-
large
not-
projects.
And they're at 11:59 PM on Sunday night.
I understand. When we go to, Panama, we're leaving.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving, 6 a.m.
It's just redevelopment.
Yeah. I mean, happens that- There's not many of them. Wow.
Yeah, there's really only.
Which warehouse was the one?
There's Atlanta, there's Atlanta. One place a day. It's American.
Remember where it was.
Well, they actually had the better times because they actually.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you too.
Good one.
Somebody asked me about it this
Um,
morning.
actually left like 7 o'clock down there to come home. And I was